Can artists cheat? Today I'm going to be talking about the different methods artists use to create their works, and then I'm going to weigh in on my opinion of these different methods. For people that aren't artists, there is a vision of what someone looks like when they're painting, and it's usually an easel set up in front of the subject matter and then them painting the subject matter. We see this a lot of times in movies. There's always usually a comical scene of somebody who accidentally gets thrown into a life drawing class where they are unexpectedly having to draw someone who's naked. When using this method, artists will try to make sure their proportions are correct, and you sometimes see this in movies where they'll hold up a pencil and they'll kind of measure it out. That is so that they can say that the length right here between, let's say, my eye and my nose is the same between the nose and the tip of my chin, so that when they're drawing, they mark it off exactly right. Using this tactic, they're comparing different parts of the object to one another to make sure that the proportion size is right and that they're in the right space on the canvas. In addition to using the object to measure against itself to make sure your scale is correct, artists will very frequently have a grid. Grid helps a lot with perspective, but it also helps cement that this line is truly going down, this line's truly going up, because you have to look at it, and it can help keep you from getting lost in the weeds. Few people would find these traditional techniques to be disingenuous or cheating. We expect that you're going to need to check your proportions with your pencil. We expect that you should have a grid to ensure your perspective is on point. Some artists would even make rudimentary grids with wood and string where there would be maybe 9 boxes, 12 boxes, and they were looking through those boxes and they would draw those boxes then on their canvas, and that was how they could ensure that their perspective and proportions stayed right. The most common use of the grid method is to take an image, put a grid on it, and then have a matching grid on your canvas, where square by square you match it up. I've got a quick little demonstration of that now. The first thing I did was I selected my image and I put a grid on it, one side labeled with numbers, one side labeled with letters, and then I had a matching grid on paper. Your grid here is a guide where block by block you're transferring that image to your paper. There are a lot of pros and cons to the grid method. One of the pros is that it will almost instantly improve your drawing if you're having issues with drawing. The con is that people typically only draw what is in the grid. There's no creativity or ingenuity there. One could say that they're copying the photograph that somebody else made. I have seen some people react to the grid method and feel that the grid method was disingenuous and that artists who were using it were cheating, because they had this sense that true artists just came up with things from their head, looked at a piece of paper and drew a dog. That's not very fair. As an artist, you're not expected to have the entire world memorized. Having reference material is good. In fact, some of the weaknesses that I see in newer artists is that they're so focused on their drawing and not what they're drawing that they miss the actual details of the subject matter because they're not looking at it. They're just drawing what they think they see. It's way better to inform your opinion with what is actually there. And if you don't believe me, try to draw a bicycle from memory. All of a sudden, you may realize that you don't know exactly what the structure of the bicycle is or how many spokes there are or exactly where the gears fit on the bike. And in an effort to draw something from memory, it's going to probably look a little wonky and weird. And while it may not be a sophisticated art critic looking at your work, the everyday person has seen bicycles enough that they just intrinsically know that it's off. As I said before, with the traditional method of using the pencil and measuring the item against itself, and even using the grid that someone brings, very few people are going to say that artist is cheating. But people get a little wishy-washy about the grid method, and I agree with it. For me, the grid method isn't cheating, but it is limited. If you're taking an image and going like for like from the image to your canvas, there's no real artistic interpretation. There's no real change that you're doing. You didn't select the subject. You didn't make the composition. Also, cameras digest the image in a way that we might not have if we were seeing it in person. What then is the point if you're going like for like? One of the things that makes one artist stand out from another is their style. And if you're copying the lines, the shape, the everything of one object directly onto another, is your style going to show up as much? Or is everything sort of going to have this photographic-ish feel to it? That's not to say that it doesn't take talent to do the grid method. People who are very technically sound and great at photorealism, their stuff does look amazing. With the advent of electricity, with computers, with drawing tablets, also came the projector. The projector is a lot like using the grid method, except you're not bothering with drawing the grid on the image or on your paper. You project the image onto your canvas, and then you sketch it out based upon that. They're not doing it line for line, but they're getting out the rough idea of the image. For other people, it is much more detailed. This has the same issue as the grid method. What ends up happening is if the artist is just taking that image and transferring it to the canvas, then they're doing nothing to affect the composition, the presentation, or anything. They're effectively being a very expensive copy machine. What I found really interesting about the projectors was that I was even able to find some that were geared towards kids. Same tactic, it just shoots the image down onto the paper for them to then draw. With technology being what it is, there are a lot of projector-like options out there. There's even one for the iPad for drawing. So you can do it with your iPad, you can do it with your computer, you don't need a projector. With the original example I gave of how artists were drawing and painting and making sure their proportions were correct, that was very low technology. You can see someone in the Renaissance time period using their pencil to check. You can see somebody constructing with wood and string their grid. When it comes to using the grid method for photography, though, that only started happening once photography came about. Now what we have are projectors, digital tablets, drawing software, a lot of modern innovations that have affected how artists are producing their work. Is the way that they're producing their work ethical? Is the way that they're producing their work cheating? The digital world does not hide that it uses reference materials. Here I've got an image from another YouTuber called Ross Draws, and this is him using a reference material on his tablet to do a drawing. Again, as an artist, you're not expected to memorize the world, and in fact, your artwork's better if you continue to inform your opinion by looking at the world. On YouTube, there are artists that will do storytime videos where they'll have a reference material and then their sketch over it, and they're effectively tracing the image. Most of us would feel that if you're tracing an image, that you're not transforming it in any way, and that it is cheating. Prior to that technology, and still in a lot of use today, is what's called a light box. Light boxes are fairly cheap. You put down an image, you put your paper over it, the light shines through, and it allows you to see the image underneath your paper, which is also another form of tracing. A lot of cartoonists used to use this method for their comic strips because they would have their sketches, and an easier way to clean it up would be to just redraw it. That way you didn't have all the previous line work of what you had done. People can also take images of stuff that is not their work and sketch it out that way. Most people would find sketching things out that way, taking something line for line, to not be transformative and to fall along the line of being disingenuous, where you would feel that this person was cheating and that they actually hadn't created something. Artwork produced feels more authentic if it has reference material, but it isn't exactly the reference material. I'm going to give an example of one of my paintings to show how you can both have artistic integrity and use the grid method. In this painting that I did, I had been inspired by the movie What Dreams May Come. That's the purple tree that's melting when she destroys it. Now the woman is not her, the woman is me, and I'm grayed out like the ghostly characters that happened in the film if you haven't seen it. Now, I took a photo of myself for reference material because I wanted to try to capture my own features, and I also had the idea and the image from the film. These were multiple references coming together to make one image, but also it wasn't that I was following them line for line, block for block. I don't find any of these techniques to be cheating, but I do find them to be disingenuous or less than creative and not very interesting if the image that you get in the end is too close to your reference material and that none of your personal style and none of your own creativity is showing through. A solid artist is going to have reference material, but your end product shouldn't be the reference material. What do you think? Would you be disappointed if you found out that the painting you liked was from an image projected onto the canvas? Or would you be happy with it because you still enjoy the skill level and the execution that the artist had when they did it? Please leave some comments down below. Thank you for watching.